Hey friends, it's Laurie. Today I'm crafting in neutral tones with just a hint of color. I'm making a Farmhouse White Christmas wreath, a winter round tree candle holder, and a Let It Snow block DIY. As always, I used mostly Dollar Tree supplies and a few things that I had on hand. I hope you have fun crafting with me, so let's get busy. Getting started, I'm using one of the 14-inch wire wreath forms from the Dollar Tree. I'll be wrapping it with 3 microfiber cloths, and at the Dollar Tree, I found these in the automotive department. I have my first piece lying flat lengthwise. I place my wreath form right side up on top of the fabric. I then pulled all of it over the top and tucked it underneath. As I was adding it, I made sure that I had enough fabric left over so that I could cover the top. When that was done, I pulled the top fabric tightly over the form and tucked the edge underneath. With everything pulled tightly against the form, I then glued down the edge. With my first piece glued in place, I then lightly scrunched it together. To add on my second piece, I just followed the same instructions as the first. Pulled the fabric over and tucked it under the form. I then pulled the fabric tightly over the top and hot glued down the edges on the bottom. Because you'll want to move the fabric around, this is why no hot glue will come directly in contact with the wire wreath form. With it all in place, I'm now scrunching this side of the fabric up and I'm adding on my last piece. With all 3 of the microfiber cloths attached to my wreath, I'm tucking under the edges on the top and the bottom, so this way you can't see where the fabric began and where it ended. To decorate my wreath, I'm starting by using 2 stems of the sparkly greenery from the Dollar Tree. I want to be able to place them down individually, so I'm cutting them free from the main stem. I always like to lay out my greenery first before I permanently attach it. So I'm basically trying to match my placement on the top with the greenery on the bottom. I'm adding a bow to my wreath, so I'm leaving an open space where I'll be attaching it. With everything in place, I'm now attaching it with my glue gun. As the floral focus on my wreath, I'm using 2 of the large white poinsettias, and these came from the Dollar Tree. They have a pretty silver accent center, and I just popped 2 of them from the main stem. I'm also using 2 smaller white poinsettias, and these came from the Dollar Tree as well. These 2 have sparkly centers, and the top petals have a lacy accent. I placed the 2 larger flowers on the inside of the wreath and the 2 smaller on the outside. Happy with their placement, I used my hot glue gun to attach them. With my flowers in place, I'm now making a bow for my wreath, and I'm using my bow maker. I picked this up a while back on Amazon. I'll be attaching my bow together using a piece of floral wire. For my first layer, I'm using this pretty 2.5-inch sparkly silver ribbon, and this came from the Dollar Tree. To start my bow, I'm making 2 12-inch tails and 4 4.5-inch loops. To make it easier to shape my bow, both of my ribbons are wired. When I was done, I then cut both of the tails at an angle. My next ribbon is 2.5 inches. It's white with silver accents. This I had on hand, but you can find similar ribbon. It's a little bit smaller in the wedding department at the Dollar Tree. Adding this ribbon, I'm once again making 2 12-inch tails, but this time I'm making 4 3.5-inch loops. Just like my silver ribbon, I cut both of the tails off at an angle. I placed the floral wire around the center of my bow, pulled it tightly, and then twisted it together on the back. I then fluffed out all of my loops. I have a small piece of wire left over on the back, and you can snip it off if you'd like. I'm just going to fold mine over and press it against the bow. I placed my bow between my 2 large flowers and then hot glued it into place. The next layer that I'm adding to the wreath are 2 stems of this frosted greenery from the Dollar Tree, and it has these large white berry accents that are actually little white styrofoam balls. I'm once again using my clippers and cutting each free from the main stem. I live out in the country, and every once in a while something will get into the house, and of course here's a little stink bug that showed up on my glue gun wire. It surprised me at first, but I just caught him. I never kill anything, and I let it outside. Back to the wreath, I'm adding on my greenery with the berries. I'm pretty much trying to mimic what I place on the bottom onto the top. To give myself some greenery behind the bow, I'm placing 2 of the sprigs there. To make sure that nothing falls from the wreath, I then hot glued them all in place. While I was at the Dollar Tree picking up my wreath supplies, to add on another layer of color and texture, I picked up 2 stems of this snow greenery. This time I tucked it in between the other greenery, just trying to hide those open spaces. While making this wreath, these are the colors and the greenery that I chose, but Dollar Tree has a ton of different options, so you can always change it up. As my final accent, to pull that sparkly silver from the center of the poinsettias, I'm using a silver branch from the Dollar Tree and I'm snipping it into individual pieces. I ended up with a pretty big handful, and so now I'm just tucking them randomly in the wreath. Here and there, I don't have any set plan. And as I'm doing it, if I don't like where I've tucked it in, I just pull it out and put it in a different place. Now that I have them all in place, this was probably the hardest part of making this wreath. I had to make sure with my glue gun that I went in and gave each one of them a little dot of hot glue. Now that I'm done, my pretty white Christmas wreath is complete. And although I'm somebody that usually likes a lot of color, I do like the simplicity, and this will surely complement anyone's winter or Christmas home decor. Getting into the holiday spirit, I'm participating in my monthly friend collab group, and my DIYs are White Christmas. Our host is my sweet friend Liana from Liana DIY. And our guest host this month is Up All Night DIY with Monica. They're both talented crafters, and you can check them out along with my friend Emily from Farm Charm Chic. I'll have the Christmas playlist linked below in my description. If you're new to my channel, please consider clicking on that little red subscribe button below and leaving me a thumbs up. To all my amazing friends, you know I'm always so happy to see you. To start my candle holder, I'm using 6 white winter tree ornaments from the Dollar Tree. There's a little hanger hole at the top of each, and I'm going to hide it with a crystal. I'm using some of the pretty light green diamond wrap from the Dollar Tree, and I cut away 7 individual pieces because I'll also be using one on the base. To attach them, I'm using some of this liquid adhesive that I picked up in the craft department at the Dollar Tree. I first added a dot over each hanger hole and then attached the crystals. For the base of my candle holder, I'm using a thick round wooden circle. I found it in the craft department at the Dollar Tree, and it's meant to be some type of hanging decor. Because I'm using mine as a base, I removed the hanger. Keeping with my neutral colors, I'm giving it a coat of white acrylic paint. I let it dry completely, and to accent the bottom, I'm adding on a piece of this pretty celery green ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I wrapped it around the base and then cut it to size. I then attached the end of the ribbon to the base with a dot of hot glue. To help secure it, I added a couple of extra dots of hot glue here and there, and then attached the end. To hide the hanger hole that's now on my base, I'm placing in some of the liquid adhesive, and then I'm using my last green crystal to hide the hole. I'm attaching my 6 trees to the base. I added a generous amount of hot glue over the ribbon and attached the trunk of the tree. To help with the spacing, I attached my second tree directly across from my first. I'm now attaching my last 4 trees, and this time, instead of adding the hot glue onto the ribbon, I'm adding it onto the trunk of the tree. The hot glue, it's doing a good job holding them in place, but if you prefer, you can always use some E6000 and a few pieces of painter's tape to hold them until they set up. I'm adding a reindeer accent onto my candle holder, and I'm using one of these white reindeers. They're ornaments, and I picked it up at the Dollar Tree. I want to add in a pop of color, so I matched the paint the best that I could to my ribbon, and I'm painting the antlers and the scarf. Attaching my deer to the candle holder, I'm using some E6000 along with my glue gun. I snipped away the branches on 2 trees where they met up so that I had a flat surface. I added on some hot glue and then some E6000. The hot glue will set it up quickly, while the E6000 will hold the deer in place permanently. For the inside of my candle holder, I'm actually using a recycled candle holder. When it burned down to the bottom, I added in some boiling water, and then I just cleaned it out. I'm using an LED votive candle from the Dollar Tree, and I just turned it on and placed it inside. I then placed both into my winter tree candle holder. Now that I'm done, this makes such a pretty and warm accent to display during the Christmas and winter holidays. To make my Let It Snow sign, I'm using 11 of the small wooden dice, and I picked these up at the Dollar Tree. I'm adding on 2 snowflakes, so I'll end up with one of the wooden dice left over, and I'm sure I'll use that in a project in the future. I'm using my white acrylic paint, and I'm giving them all a coat. As I'm painting them, I'm not being super fussy because I am going to distress them once they're dry. They look like a bunch of marshmallows that you could use to make s'mores, but I'm distressing mine with a piece of coarse sandpaper. This part is kind of fun because you don't have to think about what you're doing. I'm just rubbing the sandpaper on all 4 sides of all 11 blocks. Now that I have them all distressed, I'm adding on some stickers that I found at the Dollar Tree. Unfortunately, they only gave me one eye and it's in the floral pattern, so I'm just going to cut the L and turn it into an eye. They are super sticky, and I'm spelling out the words, "Let it snow." What I liked about these stickers is they're not a solid color and they have a bit of that farmhouse vibe to them. Before I attach my letters together, I'm using my pencil and I'm just kind of outlining the circle around them. When I'm done, I'm then gently smudging it with my fingers. This step is completely optional. I just thought by adding on the pencil accent, it helped the letters pop. I'm attaching a snowflake to a block on my top and bottom words. And I'm using 2 wooden snowflakes from this Dollar Tree sticker pack. To complement the lettering, I painted both of mine with some gray acrylic paint. I want to give them a bit of a sparkle, and you can use the diamond wrap from the Dollar Tree. You simply cut them into individual pieces. I happen to have a box of jewels, so I'm going to use these instead. I'm attaching them to my snowflake using some of the Dollar Tree's liquid adhesive. I'm placing a small amount in the center and then attaching the jewels. I'm adding a dot of adhesive on all 6 points and then placing on the jewels. Adding these on, it's completely optional. I just like when the sun or the light hits the sign, it gives it that little bit of sparkle. I'm attaching the snowflakes onto my blocks using some E6000. I added some to the back of each snowflake and attached them onto the blocks. I gave them some time to set up, and now using my E6000, I'm attaching all of my blocks together. I added each word together first, and now I'm adding on the snowflakes. I waited for about an hour to give them time to set up, and then I added on some E6000 and centered the words one on top of the other. Behind my sign, I'm using 2 of the white Christmas tree ornaments from the Dollar Tree. On the top, they each have a hanger hole, so I added some liquid adhesive and a crystal to cover it. I added a generous amount of E6000 onto my trees and then attached them to the back of the sign. I'm making a simple riser for my Let It Snow sign out of a piece of recycled wood, and mine measures 2 by 9 inches. I'm adding on some feet, and I'm using 8 of the tumbling tower blocks from the Dollar Tree. I'm first attaching the tumbling tower blocks together, and I'm using my Starbond thick glue. It sets natural wood up super quick, And if you'd like to try it out, I do have the company linked below. I'm attaching my blocks in sets of 2, one on top of the other. After giving them a few minutes to set up, I'm now adding some glue to the wood and attaching the feet. I let it set up for, say, 10 minutes or so, and then using the same gray acrylic paint that I painted the snowflakes, I gave it a coat. Now that it's dry, I'm using some of the black and white farmhouse ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I wrapped it around the outside of my riser and then cut it to size. I added some hot glue to both ends and the back and attached my ribbon. Now that I'm done, all that's left to do is to place down my Let It Snow sign. Here we are at the end of the video, and I really hope you enjoyed making these White Christmas DIYs with me. Please be sure to check out my friends on the playlist, and come on back when you're done. I'll link more Christmas and winter DIYs in my description. I hope you all have an amazing day, stay safe and healthy, and I will see you soon. Bye everybody!